Welcome to Apache Karaf Essentials. I'm Jamie Goodyear. Today we're going to talk about declarative services via the Service Component Runtime. In this series, we've discussed how we take regular Java jars, make them into bundles that export certain services, and other ones require those to be able to build our applications. We start with a bundle activator, a special activator class we add to a jar, our bundle, that allows us to register or find registered services so we can use them at runtime. It's a very manual process, and the developer needs to know quite a little bit about how the environment operates. Then we looked at Blueprint, a way to put all that additional boilerplate code into a simpler XML format. Now we're going to talk about declarative services. This model is slightly simpler because we just have to add annotations to our code. So within our first bundle, we can say, hey, by this annotation, I want to export these services, and by another set of annotations, we can find and bind those at runtime. Reducing the amount the developer has to type out and just simplifies things. So let's get into this. The actual implementation of declarative services in the OSGi system is done through our Service Component Runtime. What this does is provide a collection of annotations we can use that at runtime we can translate into XML, just like Blueprint, and be able to manage all of those injections, activating components, the service runtime life cycles. All that gets done underneath the hood. The key part here is that we just have to put in the annotations to the code. We don't have to maintain that XML. Let's take a little closer look now at how this all comes together. The first portion what we really want to talk about is publishing. So when we build a component, that's just a regular piece of Java code with a component annotation, and we're going to publish to the system some particular interface and say, hey, I work on this. We'll see this in a sample code in a moment, so this will become a lot clearer. When we want to have something consume, we first need to find something that provides that service and then bind to it. So the first thing we're going to say is I want to register my component, and then I want another one to say I want to find based on an interface. SCR system, the actual service, is going to say, yep, I got that interface, and now I'll allow you to bind to it. And that then wires these bundle A and bundle B together. So to be able to demo this, all we really need to be able to do is make an API bundle, a provider bundle, and a consumer bundle. Let's take a look at a very simple API. This class is just exposing a single method called getResponse. It takes in a string and responds with a string. There's no additional XML, no annotations around this, just a very plain piece of Java. In our provider, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce our first annotation. In this case, it's called a component. We're going to set it to say this component is implementing this API. In our case, the SCR request response API class. That is what we're going to implement. And then using standard Java, we just override its method with a little output message so we can see that it's working. In our consumer class, or bundle, we should say here, we write our component, and then we implement out a couple of these annotations. The first is a reference annotation. This is telling the system, I want to get a reference to someone who implements our request response API. Then the next two annotations, activate and deactivate, is very similar to our start and stop methods we see in our other methodologies. This says when we start up this bundle, do this code. When we stop this bundle, do this set of code. Okay, let's take a look inside of our IDE, and this is going to get a lot clearer. In this project, we've loaded this up onto our repo so you can download it and have a closer look. You can see we have a parent POM, and we have three modules, our API, provider, and consumer. Let's take a quick look at the API. This is a standard bundle, and we use our Maven bundle plugin to wrap it up so it becomes deployable in our graph system. And we have that simple interface. Our provider is also a OSGi bundle. We import two things, our API bundle, and we are also going to pick up the OSGi component annotation jar. We then use Maven bundle plugin to build out this jar as per our usual methodology. And inside of our service implementation, we can see it's just standard Java with just the one extra annotation. Going to our consumer, again, a very similar story. It's a bundle. We pick up our API jar, and we also pick up the components. We also build using the Maven bundle plugin. The consumer code, as pointed out before, is just a component with a reference to our service and start and stop activations. Let's deploy this stuff into Apache Karaf. So I've got a 4.46 Karaf up and running. Let's take a quick look in here. I've added into README the installation steps. We've already pre-compiled this. First thing we're going to want to do is install the SCR feature. This is telling Karaf to have the ability to run declarative services built in. So we've now installed those. And we're going to quickly copy and paste in here all of these install commands to install all of our bundles. You'll see these very quickly get fired up, and we see already some outputs. We can see that the service impl was started and that we got our first bit of text passed into it, which was the test SCR demo, into our service impl, and all that came out. Brilliant. Now, next thing we may be asking ourselves is, well, that's great, but what about config-min? We've done that for all of our other samples. How are we going to do that moving forward? Well, we've thought about that here, and what I want to show you is how we can get config-min. We've already built a branch with config-min information added in. You see, as soon as I checked it out, we got a brand new README file. All we had to do was add a couple of additional annotations into our class. Let's do this on our slides first before we look into our code. So our component at the very beginning of our implementation has been updated. We now have a configuration PID and a configuration policy. The PID is just saying, hey, this is the process ID to which we have a config file. In our case, we're calling it config src demo. And we're considering this configuration to be optional. We could make it required. The optional says that if the file's there, use it. If it's not there, we're going to have to fall back to our defaults. Internally, the code has changed in that we now have a greetings string that our original method will now return as a responsive greeting plus whatever the input was. We include the annotation for a new interface called sample config, in which we say, hey, we want a string greeting, and we give it a default value of hello. And we also include an activate, modified, and deactivate. So think of this from our blueprint or our first bundle activator video as being start, stop, and update functions that take in this config file, and we want to pick out the property for greeting. So we are going to pick out whatever's been configured in there, and then we can use that at runtime. Let's go back into the IDE and see how this works. So we're going to build this code. We'll see this build through. And since we are only updating the provider, we can do an update on bundle number 58. That will turn off the original code. Now it's going to pick up what we just built, deploy it into Karaf, and things are up and running. You can actually see here our default value of hello came through the system. So I can do a list. You can see it's running here. Let's recreate that config file, and we're going to put in here a greeting, and we're going to say howdy. And you'll see that that gets picked up very quickly by Karaf, and now the system is up and running again with our brand new greeting. If I was to stop our consumer client, so stop 59, start 59, we can see that we are now using the configured value of the greeting from config-min. Pretty cool. So with this, we have now had a look at bundle activators, the blueprint, and now declarative services. I think you'll find declarative services are going to be a lot easier, a lot more fun to develop your code in. That being said, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe. Cheers.